going to be my narrative moving forward, to be quite honest, is you better have a good reason if you're going to strip the voters right away to weigh in on this project. And so even those voters who may not love the project, like their right to weigh in and vote. And that's my threshold. I want to get it to a vote. And then we can fight the communication.
Can I ask you a question about their take on it, whether they think it's going to vary the town or not? I'd just like to know, is there an alternate plan? Because there are buildings that need work. And ultimately, it's our responsibility as a town, as a community, to have safe schools. So is there a plan? Like, are they giving alternate ways? Because if you just shut down the vote, you still have to go down that road, right?
But I think it's a slippery slope to even go down. I mean, that approach, and
Okay.
I just feel that we've worked, and I think Luke made an excellent point, that the town council has appointed this committee for 2.5 years of work.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, then other individuals like Mr. Conti and other people that have been involved, and he highlighted the expertise. We have people that do this work for a living that have recent successes like East Providence and working on Newport, and you know, I mean, there's a lot of other, and I feel that has to be heard. And the second part is, I think once we start talking about options, because the town manager threw out an option in his mind, but that shouldn't be. This is the option now, that the work, and I feel that it's our job to get the council. I know that I've been working with people. Hopefully the council members are going to start hearing from people because they've asked, right? I mean, the council members have asked. I haven't heard from anybody. We need to make sure people are reaching out. But this is the option that we need to get to the voters, right?
Yeah.
This is the decision. And, you know, I remember all the times I've been in meetings with Lee posing different things. I mean, it wasn't like these were not discussed, other options, right?
No.
They were vetted by this excellent group, and these have all been public meetings. So I think I'm just concerned if we start, not to be critical, but this is the option that this has come up with. And I'm hoping the council will put it forward to the voters to the same point that you did, because that's all we hear about the public, the voters, their rights. I hear this about mass, about that, everybody's rights. Well, this is a true right that they have, and we need to get it through them.
Yeah, and I agree. I also want to say, hear what you're saying is to push back on, I think what you're saying is push back on council and say, what's your alternative? Right, so if this isn't the project you want, if you think this is, you know, and we have done that a little bit. There was a little discussion in that previous meeting where the town manager, quite frankly, just threw out some idea about consolidation of elementary schools, which we both talked about, which we priced out and we looked at.
I was just going to say, there's really, you have the whole maintenance component to this. That's where the option part is. The option is build something new and pay this much, or continue to maintain and pay what I believe is an equivalent amount. And I think that's part of the argument is if you're going to spend $3 million in a year, you spend $3 million a year in debt service for this, or you spend $3 million a year to continually put Band-Aids on bullet wounds.
Yeah, and that's actually where I was going. Like, I was thinking that what is it costing us in a year to maintain what we're doing versus this project?
Yeah, and I think it's the, you know, communication is always the difficult thing. Right? How do you boil it down a little something
Right, which I
and
understand.
express that, like what we think intuitively, but we're making. How do we get others to make that linkage to the point that, you know, we talked about it. I said it. That, you know, you're going to pay, you're going to bleed slowly, or you're going to pay in one chunk and get more for your value. It's really expressing that I think I've had a hard time with, of really looking at it long term and saying it's tough to express an impact of a result that hasn't happened. So, you know, 10 years from now, people will be kicking themselves. I know if they don't do this. Well, how do you express that? And that's kind of where I'm going wrong right now. Any other dialogue on this topic? But, you know, to Craig's point, you know, the biggest thing I'm focusing on right now is this is the project. There is no other project. And any talk about, well, can we boil it down, everything else? Right now, no, there's not. This is the project we take on. Correspondence and ongoing actions. So I want everyone to know that I did have a conversation with Mario Carino on Saturday. I think it was a good conversation. He continues to be very supportive. Primarily, I had contacted him because Don had given me some information that was from a report, by the way, that I shared with a council member weeks ago, which he keeps floating out there that he didn't receive any information, but I did provide that information, maybe not in the format exactly the way he wanted it. But Don synthesized that in an email, but Barrington was missing. And the reason Barrington ended up missing is because it was really done in 2016, and some of the information from the report was really since the bond was passed in 2018. So Barrington didn't get that extra bump. I think they got probably the base rate of 35%. But I think Barrington's a very good comparison as far as the school footprint, because that's what we're going for, middle school. But I think, you know, I hopefully everyone saw the email I put out. I did put it to the entire building committee. I sent it to blind copy to everybody in the council. And because I think it's important for everybody on this committee to know the information that Mario provided, because that's going to be key in your dialogue moving forward about what other communities have done this. And some of the kind of takeaway points that I kind of noted under there about Barrington, about, you know, our school size compared to other districts. I think a lot of times that's missed. It's like, well, Situate's not doing one. Well, Situate's not Coventry, you know. We're a very large school district. So you can't express that enough to people, is that we're not a podunk community, even though we're viewed that way still. Our school district has always been fairly substantial for a community of this size.
And to your point, Cumberland is probably as close as any other district is going to be to our size and population. And their project was pretty much the same cost as our project, within $8 or $9 million.
Right. And I think that's an important point, because I will say that, again, one individual school committee, council member has pointed out a number of comparisons to Cumberland and Coventry in the past. And so if you want to start comparing, here's a comparison. Does anybody have any questions on my correspondence with Mario? We did talk about probabilities, you know, what happens if and all that stuff. I won't get into that. I will say that, you know, in general, as always, he's very helpful, very knowledgeable, and has offered to continue to help us anyway. Other project-related events, I also want to let everybody know I did have a meeting. Harold and myself had a meeting today with the OPM team to discuss, and I'm sure they'll talk tonight. They're here from Peregrine, but they did convey that they had met with Bill. I'm sure they'll kind of debrief on, and that we talked in general about OPM's role about procurement of the architect engineering team, the time schedules, all of which I'm sure they'll go over tonight with you. So I just want to make sure the committee's in the loop on all that. In addition, Alita and I had been talking on schedule. She provided that schedule, the refined schedule today, which I put in a folder and shared with groups. So hopefully we can get the Google share on that. If you didn't, let us know. We'll get the schedule to you. Lee has always been corresponding with me here and there. So just on his thoughts on the presentation. Any other correspondence? Oh, and we went to the trunk or treat on Friday, which thanks Don and Amy for coordinating that, getting everything into the truck. I just showed up, so and handed out a lot of candy, which was not mine.
1,000 pieces.
Yeah, I would say well over 1,000. It started at 6. The line wrapped all the way around the field, and it didn't end until after 8:30. Right, and Ann was there with some of the council team giving out lots. Craig was there. So I think it was a great event, but the biggest thing for the building committee was Don had brought, you know, I'm sure Amy coordinated on this, is some half-size sheets about the project. And we had the boards up, and as parents went by, Don kind of stopped them and muckled them and said, hey, by the way, we have this project going on. And I would say that happens quite a bit. Obviously not 1,000 times, but probably 100 times or a couple.
I gave out almost 200 flyers, and I was only giving them to families, not to individual people, at least what I could think was a family. Anybody who was very overwhelmed with lots and lots of little kids in bags and strollers, I kind of let them alone. But anybody, especially if somebody stopped and looked at the poster, I use that as an opportunity to get in and talk to them, which that actually happens quite a bit.
It did.
So,
You get a lot of comments, kids coming by like, oh, that, I go to Washington Oak, I go, well, we're putting money in there. The parents are there. So Don did a great job. Thank you enough. Amy, thank you, for helping set that up. I think it was a positive event. That was exactly the kind of things I point to that I think we should be doing, is meet them where they're at. And they were there, and we were able to just get their attention while they were there. So I think it was good.
and the interesting thing about that population is many of them are not school-age kids. They're younger than school age. Because a lot of parents said to me, oh, my daughter's gonna be in kindergarten at Washington Oak next year. My son's is in preschool and is gonna be a kindergarten at Tyoke next year. So they're not getting the same communication that the parents are getting. They're not at open house. They're not getting any of that. So here's an opportunity for us to get in front of the people. And I said to one of the parents, I said, how old is your son? And I think the student was in 2nd or 3rd grade. And I said, well, when this middle school project is done, your child will be benefiting from that. I said, and the kids who are there at Feinstein right now, unfortunately, are going to be off in high school at that point, but they're going to be benefiting from projects that are happening at the high school. So I was trying to sell it from all angles.
You didn't have the model out there.
I was going to, but the model required electricity, which we didn't have, and the model also requires a lot of lifting. And so, but we did comment, and not because the model is very good, but Luke and I were talking in between people that maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a smaller tabletop model that doesn't have the whole site plan, but maybe it's just
Yeah,
the
I think
building.
maybe a model that was cut that maybe is bigger than what's on the large model, something this size. That's maybe more detailed as far as the exterior, but that we could put down, because I think it's just more manageable. I mean, the overall model is great, but I think that's good for an event, and we'll have to think about maybe placement of that in the future.
Mhm.
Luke, the previous weekend, 2 things I saw. So I went to homecoming, which people really didn't care very much about what was going on at homecoming. So instead, I put all the flyers on windows. And one of the teachers from the high school stopped me and said, oh, you should get kids, like the National Honor Society or the kids that are trying to get community service hour kids to put flyers on the cards, which I think is a great idea. If it was within the school confines, this week we have something scheduled at Stop and Shop. I would feel uncomfortable having kids going through a parking lot at Stop and Shop. So, and that's this weekend at Stop and Shop. But so I did. I put about 100 flyers on cars at homecoming. But on the next day, everybody that I talked to, I was at Fish Hill from 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock until about 2 o'clock. I had a table set up. By the way, Coventry Soccer was amazing. They were super supportive. They helped me attach a lot of the boards to the fencing with zip ties. Sorry, there's little holes on them. But it was that windy Saturday, so things were blowing all over the place. So they helped me attach them, and the families were super interested in learning about the project. And we and Sarah Mangiarelli helped too. We kind of weaved through the different games over the course of the day, passing out flyers and talking with people. But the families were extremely supportive of the project.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Same with me, because Amy and I debrief a little bit after each one of these things just to see what we can learn from the event. That's why when Luke and I got together for Trunk or Treat, we decided one of us would stand behind the table and one in front, because what Amy had told us from the prior week is people don't come to the table to take a flyer. You have to give it to them.
Mhm.
So that's why we kind of took that strategy. But pretty much 100%, 99% of the people were positive with the information. I had one person asked me a snarky comment, but other than that, it was fine.
You kind of get the gist of it.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have team updates too,
Mhm.
so I don't want to steal all your thunder.
Yep.
This is from me.
Oh, team update, that's it.
Yeah, we're done. We're done.
I got PD.
It's raining. We gotta go.
Roll all your thunder, roll your lightning right in. No, I can't thank you enough. I mean, this is the stuff that it's gonna matter, especially getting parents. We don't have to get everyone to vote, turn off that microphone, but we need to get, motivated parents to be out there advocating for themselves and their children and everything, so that's the type of stuff that I think is great. Anything else on that topic? Any other questions on my actions or report? Okay, so then we'll move on. Project schedule review and discussion. Olivia, do you want to take this one?
Sure, I didn't
But
bring
you
copy of
created the schedule?
Yeah, no, well, all I did is update, right? So right now, we're pushing for November 8th is the council meeting that we're all trying to be as present as possible at. So, I don't, it's at the 8th tonight, even though I don't have it in
You
front
are
of me.
correct.
It's 8.
And then next week on the 4th, but no, we're bi-weekly, the meeting should be pretty well set for that calendar. When's the council vote? November, I'm sorry, I didn't bring a
22nd.
copy.
I think.
What, mine? I barely fed my kids and got out the door. Thank you, Kathy. So yeah, so the 29th, is that locked in? That's their vote?
So we haven't locked it in. The 8th is locked in. As far as the vote, we have said that we'd like to have one the end of November, latest early December. And I know that Council President Dixon is working on that. Is that correct? Is that a fair statement?
I have put it as a placeholder on November 22nd, if the council is ready to vote.
Okay.
The next meeting of the council should be the 13th, but we may be pushing it off to the 20th. So if it doesn't happen on in November, on the 22nd, I have a choice of possibly trying to get a special meeting scheduled on the 29th of November. Otherwise, it will be in December, shortly December the 20th. So hopefully, all the questions will be answered. People will have their mindset when we hear the presentation on the 8th, and they'll be ready to do something on the 22nd. So that's what I have as a placeholder.
What's the latest that vote could happen? Is there a time stamp on that?
That's a good question. I would say I've always run it as early December, and mainly because we have to draft the enabling legislation. I really want to have it in the hands of, right now, it would be Tom DeRay offered to kind of take it to the legislature to start it in his hands for the 4th, because that's when they start session. I think it's 4th or 5th this year.
I only bring it up because when Ian mentioned a later December date, I know that they're forecasting for the weather to be interesting this year, and I hate to have us packed up because we have, a weather event and the vote doesn't happen by a particular timeline.
Well, I mean, what I said, we're aiming towards November 22nd.
Oh, all right. I thought you said December.
No, I said
Okay.
November 22nd. Our next official meeting would be in December.
Okay.
But if we don't get a vote on the 22nd, I might try to entertain a possibility of the members coming together for the 29th to vote.
Okay.
But I mean, we're trying for the 22nd. So I'm
Great.
hoping that the meeting on the 8th is very fruitful. People get their questions answered.
I appreciate that.
And if there's any follow-ups from like that, we can't answer there on the 8th, but we're gonna have answers for everything, right? But,
There's always more questions.
yeah, right. Just trying to figure out that we would probably within that 1 week time frame, like if there were any follow-up questions or questions that came up that didn't come, would having any answers by like the 15th, is that 1 week enough of a time frame to say 15th to the 22nd, that 2 week buffer?
Well, I mean, if there are any follow-up questions and responses, they could always be sent as an email to the town manager and ask him to distribute the information to the town council members.
So anything else on schedule? You had mentioned today, which I think is a good idea, about sending out calendar reminders for the meetings.
Yeah, we should do that. So if we're locked in, I don't mind setting them and getting them out at least through. So again, we're back on a bi-weekly, I mean, some are Tuesdays, some are Wednesdays, I'll have to double check how those landed that way.
Yeah.
But we're back on we're meeting again next week is a 2 week back-to-back because we're gonna be prepping for the 8th. And then after that, we're on a bi-weekly rotation pretty much through the year. So,
I'd like to get back to I don't know how others feel about that, but just standard, like the Tuesday meeting.
Yeah.
think
I
that
can,
works.
I mean, again, I think we had taken a couple, I think finance or somebody was meeting Tuesdays and we kind of shifted a couple over. So I'll try to put them all on Tuesday, the day. I'll just refine this a little.
I think the communications team, Don, you were meeting on Wednesdays, right?
We're meeting on Tuesdays.
Oh, you're meeting on Tuesdays. but you're meeting early,
It's 4 to 5.
4 to 5, so you're doing yours virtual,
Mm-hmm.
so we could still do that.
We'll get back to Tuesdays, and then bi-weekly, but we're not going to meet, we wouldn't meet again until, 2 weeks after the 8th. So we'd have the meeting with council on the 8th, and then 2 weeks after that, but that's the 8th, and then the 9th, so it'd be 2 weeks after that would be the 20th. Oh,
23rd, it's the day after their vote.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
that would then be, well, which is a good time.
I was just thinking, is that the week of Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that
I
is.
think it's earlier this year.
Yeah.
Are we gonna meet the Tuesday, Thanksgiving? week? Are you guys are gonna meet the Monday though, so. Yeah. sounds like it.
Monday's the
Yeah,
22nd.
right.
We're looking at the schedule. So,
We're in session, so
what's that?
I said schools in those days.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking the 8th is the meeting, and then our next meeting was scheduled for when?
It would be 2 weeks after, well, actually, the schedule here, we had the 8th, and our next one was the 18th,
Okay,
and we did that, I think, to avoid the other week, so it was more of a, we went back to kind of weekly,
I
but that
think the
wasn't
school
really,
committee's meeting on the 18th.
that wasn't really our meeting.
Did you hear me?
yeah,
I
so I
think
mean,
that's
if we move that
Yeah,
to the
we're-
16th on a Tuesday, regimen, gotta keep it off the.
All right, so then we go, all right, so then we go weekly and then bi-weekly from there.
Yeah.
All right, back to the 16th and then the 30th, so we would
You know,
not.
this is a guide, I mean, my hope is consistency is helpful, I think, to know when the meeting's coming up, so that's the big goal here. We've had to move a lot of stuff because of the team meetings and a lot of things going on with council and other conflicts, so the goal would be to try to get it on that too.
All right, so we'll try that, shooting back for the 16th, and I'll reset it that way, and I guess the question is, do we feel like we want to have even just a quick meeting on the 23rd to kind of debrief after council vote? See how we feel?
Anybody?
Yeah.
Just then, we're just going into
I'll
those
be there.
again. And then we'll go 3 in a row, and then we'll go 2 weeks after the
I think if the
30th.
vote's on the 22nd, because depending on the vote,
Yeah, we might not have.
maybe a very somber meeting and maybe,
Be
enjoy
crying.
vacation,
I'll be crying.
so.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so we'll do,
So we'll do a follow-up.
and then we'll go bi-weekly after, then even again, going
Yeah, I
bi-weekly.
think at that point, and then just be telling us of the holidays and schedule.
Yep.
you know,
Are we skipping Christmas week?
Something on Christmas.
Yeah, Christmas week is, yeah, I know the week everybody's not around, I get.
Something in that category between Christmas and New Year's.
And then again, I'm just gonna run us through March, which is the referendum, and that'll be bi-weekly from there.
Yeah, and just, what links into this is, I'm sure the project team will talk to it. They ran out of schedule on the architect selection schedule. They chatted with us today about, so that's kind of a separate breakout schedule they're working on. So that'll link into
What are we giving them, a week, two?
I think it was what, 3 days, 3 days or so? Yeah. No problem. Good. All right. Any other questions on schedule? No? All right, moving on. Somebody's got to move around. So OPM task updates. You're up, Sam and Eric.
Would you like me to come to the table?
Yeah, come on.
If you stand next to Luke, I'll have you on camera. Or sit, either way. Stand or sit. I mean, for me, I'd stand, but you're a rookie, so you can figure it out.
I'm new to the group, so I'll do whatever you guys want. It's a pleasure to be here. I apologize, I wasn't at the last meeting. Eric Andrudis, who's one of our senior project managers, and Andy Silver was there as well. So we're trying to make sure because we know there's a lot of activities going on, so you may see a mix of the three of us as we kind of settle into your process. So, but what we want to have is make sure that you guys have continuity of process, and that's what the three of us will deliver. So it's a pleasure to be here, and we thank you for the opportunity to work with the committee. We've certainly been watching your process. The nice thing was a lot of this happened virtually over the last year and a half. So we watched a lot of your meetings. You didn't know we were there, but we saw you go through your process of your approval of your stage 2, and then some of the decision making coming out of that as you got approvals from RISE, and then I was at your meeting back in August. So it's just exciting to see you guys move through these steps.
As Luke mentioned, we've been really just trying to absorb information since we got brought on a couple weeks ago. Had a great conversation with Phil yesterday, just to kind of get a lay of the land of the stage 2, understand all the moving parts, all the things that he knows very well because he's been at Earhart this whole time. And then we had a great conversation today with Harold and Luke, just again to kind of understand all the dynamics and really again get us informed as much as possible so we can be an asset to this group and to the community. We've got some kind of big things that we're trying to tackle right now. The first is the AE, the architectural engineering solicitation process, which I think Luke mentioned. So we've been digging into developing a schedule, and I'll just speak to it at a high level right now, but our goal would be to share something with this group probably at the next meeting, just so you can see kind of the logic that we've put together around the solicitation process. I know Alita's schedule touches on that amongst a lot of the other things that you guys are doing. We think that, there's a couple things for the group to kind of think about is what type of solicitation you want this to be. We talked a little bit about today. We typically will encourage a request for qualifications as a way to select that architectural team member, because it really allows you to select the quality of the team and not race to the number. We know that the financial piece of it is not unimportant. So there are definitely ways that we can do kind of a hybrid where quals still retain kind of importance in your decision making and your criteria process. But you can still have a snapshot of what the cost would be. We believe that the fees for the architectural community usually sit in a pretty relatively narrow band. And we know where that band typically sits for this type of work. So we'd probably agree that, the market kind of sits in a pretty narrow space. But what we want to do is develop the right model for commentary. And then what we see as happening is really kind of a drafting process over the next 30 plus or minus days, get into the advertisement process in December. That would conclude likely probably early January. And then you go through a review and interview and recommendation process. Our suggestion, because we do this a lot, is that you create a small working group out of this committee, and that group would be the constant through that review and recommendation process. We've certainly seen it happen across the entire building committee, but as you guys can imagine, we've all had to make decisions on stuff. It can be a little bit challenging. It's certainly the purview of this committee how they want to do it. Where we've seen it be most effective is probably 3 to 5 people. Typically, we would see superintendent, building committee chair, finance, and two other members of the group. It is intensive. You spend a week plus or once all the responses come in, you'll spend a pretty intense 4 or 5 days reviewing everything on your own. We create a scoring criteria that the group can use. It's relatively friendly to the reviewers, but it's still, there's objective and subjective things that you're going to grade on. We would then do a consolidation of all that, review it with the group, and then you can make a decision, typically in that smaller subgroup, as to who you would want to bring in for an interview. And again, we would suggest that happens, it stays with that small group, so you have continuity of kind of review process and evaluation. And then that group could then make a recommendation out to the school building committee, full reporting out of all the criteria, of all the information, sharing of the RFPs, all that kind of stuff. I think the thing that we want to protect is the confidentiality of the information that comes in until you make that selection. The architectural community will put a lot of intellectual property into their responses, and you want to maintain that, kind of that confidentiality all the way through the interview step. And then as you are ready to make that recommendation, and then you're able to kind of share out with the layers of data that we can consolidate and kind of put into a concise presentation after this group. And then this group can then advance that to the school committee. Again, we can be there as your kind of agent to talk through all the questions, answer any questions, talk through the process. But I think your goal is to really align that team member to basically be ready to flip the switch the day after you ideally get your approval at your referendum, right? So you've done all the hard work. Yes, you're asking the architectural community to, kind of you're exercising them a little bit to go through this process with the hope that you are going to get approval. You would condition your process that says this is all subject to voter approval and the availability of funding. So that the architectural community understands that it is subject to that process. But basically you can dovetail into that, hopefully, referendum approval +1, plus day one, your team's ready to go and you can really get underway, because that's going to be critical to achieve your 2022 deadlines on your incentives that we know some of those will be expiring. And just as importantly, looking down the road to your 2025 deadline on your stage 2 approval. So, there is a little bit of a speculative piece of it, but I think it's important if you want to have any opportunity to kind of realize the short-term goals that you have with your incentives and the longer-term goals that you have criteria. And our goal is, again, not to dictate how this process happens, but to give you our suggested path and then let the group kind of react to that and make sure that, this is your process. We're just here to help and kind of lead all the pieces that you need. That's a little snapshot of what we've been doing. Happy to answer any questions.
Does the committee have any questions?
Have you been to the middle school?
I have not yet, sir. So that one of the things that we want to do is tour the properties. So we've certainly spent a lot of time looking at them in a two-dimensional document, but the opportunity to kind of go visit all these is something that's important.
Take another pair of shoes to fit in.
Okay. And then we've certainly done that tour in other communities that we've worked in, so we understand the importance of being on the ground and seeing what the students, the teachers, and the families are kind of living on a day-to-day basis. So that's obviously the reason why you're doing this, because you want to improve that for everything. Who's part of that process.
And does anybody have any questions specific to the A&E process? Does everyone seem to agree with the process laid out? Any concerns? No?
I think the other thing to mention is we'll be available for the meeting on the 8th. We'll be there just to kind of support, answer questions that are maybe more specific to the project process. Even if it doesn't get there, we'll be there.
So everyone knows, the other thing we did talk about today, and we chose not to bring that up today because I think it's a little preemptive, is the construction delivery model, which Alita has brought up in the past on how we approach. And Sam and Eric have put together a little bit of a presentation that when the time is right, we'll roll that out to present, inform us on what the delivery methods are and how they would impact our project, and kind of put it to us to decide at an early part of how we want to proceed, because it is imperative that we kind of get our mindset going for this, because this is where the fun stuff happens. And you start thinking about the project finally, and stop worrying about getting over the hump on the funding. A little bit. So we'll be doing that, right? You did kind of give us a precursor to that. And then I also did ask Sam and his team to attend on November 8th, which I'm asking everyone here to attend on November 8th, because I think we need, we really need to come together. This is the time. And so, but Sam will support, especially with questions related to construction and their experience in Barrington. He also owes me a tour, if I remember. He owes us a tour for Barrington.
Maybe dates, the superintendent has already said yes.
Okay.
So I think we just need to figure out kind of how many people.
I think we were thinking a couple from council, a couple from this group, and like keeping it fairly small. Yeah, it's a lot.
Quorum, I think those
We don't
are
wanna
the
get
things you
into
want to just think about that. We had the privilege of working with Barrington and delivering their school. We worked on it for 3.5 years. Eric was our on-site guy. We've had the privilege of working with Alita for the last 27 months in East Providence, delivering that high school. And while it's different, I think it's also just, there's good information to pull out of all these processes, because even though yours is specific to a major addition and renovation act, Feinstein, we can pull a lot of, the process that happens, how things interrelate, how you get through the bond, how you transition from bond to fund stuff, how do you maintain budget, how do you pick your partners, throughout the process. So a lot of that is universal regardless of the school type. Obviously, what's in the school, within the four walls, is very unique and special to that population. We certainly can figure out multiple tools if that helps folks kind of get a better understanding of what new buildings are really starting to state, which is pretty exciting.
And a good example, I did send out a link in the email about some photos of what Barrington looks like. I think it's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And so the OPM team will be there on the 8th. Obviously I'm leaning on my construction partners here, including John and Alita and Christine, to answer questions as well, because I think it's important that the whole committee, if those questions come up, you're the ones with the expertise. And we need to convey we have the expertise and that this isn't a half-baked idea. And that we have construction industry experience that is going to give the council hopefully some sense of stability moving forward, that we really thought this out. And it's scary. It is a scary problem. Anytime we spend $80 million, it's scary. But it's okay because we have a good team and we've done this before. It was in the first project. So, and then the last piece, which actually we didn't discuss, but I'll discuss it now, is we are going to have, and Phil knows this, we're working on kind of rectifying the Jacobs report and some of the stuff that's already been in stage 1 and stage 2, and some questions the council had of how you going to spend $80 million, which doesn't apparently through these reports address everything, while you still have some stuff to tick off on the list. And that's where also I'm hoping that you can continue to coordinate with Phil, because I think it's a dialogue that's going to happen among all of us to sort of say, this is how this works. And I think we can do that. Anybody have any questions? Any other questions?
Are you considering the November 8th meeting being a joint meeting between the town council and the CBC, or is this just a presentation by a couple of people?
Well, that's a good question, because it gets into, if we could feasibly post it as a joint meeting. I wasn't envisioning it, I personally, but I'm going to sort of say this thing, I wasn't envisioning it as a sort of joint meeting. However, I do envision multiple people from the building committee being available to present, which may, and with people in the crowd, may cause a quorum.
You have to have Dave here.
You don't want a quorum, whether it's online or in the crowd. You're better off just noticing the meeting as a joint meeting.
Do it. Okay.
But the format doesn't necessarily have to reflect the typical joint meeting format. I think maybe an expanded presentation table where we can put 5, 6, 7 people in front of council, and then people come behind us, and then we can, if we need to pull from the crowd, we can bring people off.
Okay. And then my other question is this, we really haven't talked about a budget, and I don't think it's on the agenda for this time, but I hope for next time we can talk about how we're funding all of these pieces, like this group and architects, et cetera. I mean, where is the money coming from?
So to be clear, so the OPM is hired by right now, is hired by the school department under existing some fund balance that we have. Small amount, right?
Very small.
So we beat up the Peregrine group a little bit and dangled the carrot out in front of them and said, hey, there's more money at the end of the rainbow, right? So that's how we got them on board. What we're talking about here is getting all of the contractual paperwork set up, but not pulling the trigger. So essentially, we could even bring it so far as school committee could vote to approve contingent on fund availability. And so if the bond gets voted on and passed, and we have fund availability, we can move forward. So no money would be expended on any consulting services, any additional, until a ballot vote passes. Any additional money spent on this project at this point is going to have to be raised. If there's any communications we're going to do or get out the vote, any of that's going to have to be an outside group, handling out on the corner. Right, Amy?
Right.
Even if the bond passes in March, for example.
Yep.
Money's not going to start to flow in, just because the voters are approving, borrowing money. Because I don't know at what date the money will start to be borrowed, et cetera. So I just don't understand the sequence of being able to hire people, being able to pay them, where the money's coming from. And I think this might be a discussion for another meeting. But I mean, I think it's worthy of a discussion.
I don't know if it's a meeting. I think there's an easy way that between Harold and just thinking it through. Keep in mind, we talked about pay-go.
Mhm.
A lot of the pay-go is it's exactly what it is, pay as you go. So a portion of the project will be funded up front, although we have to match in that money for the pay-go. And that's a cash flow issue. And I think something that's attainable, where we've also talked about, and again, because it's in the financing strategy, which we talked about earlier. If we levy, which I posed the question today to get the answer on, if we levy with the bond, once the tax bills go out, we'll start generating revenue almost immediately.
The tax bills won't go out to August.
Correct. But let's say an architect starts, it takes months before they get to any sort of billing, right? And you also need to have
Years. Months after that, you'll get paid.
well, like, the word goes, it's a cash flow.
Yeah, I'm just raising this issue.
Yeah, no, it's a-
We have not really laid out this plan
Correct.
by how the money comes in, if the money doesn't come in, if the money comes in, at what point does it come in, at what point do we start to sign contracts, and so on and so forth. I think it's a worthwhile kind of discussion.
Fair question.
I think it's, I just think it's fair to say on the construction design side, they're very, very sensitive to those issues for communities. And, you get a yes vote in our contract and people will work with you as far as cash flow and things like that go. But to have something more focused everywhere, it's typical. Yeah, so we can.
Well, I mean, I don't care whether we're alone or we're one in a big pile of people. I just think we need to have a discussion.
Yeah, so you understand it.
So, Harold, that's something that as we run financials, maybe look at the cash flow on that as well.
Well, we're gonna have to, and then we're gonna have to work with the town, because the town should be receiving the money.
So we get, it's questions posed, we'll get it in. Anything else? Anybody got anything else? Eric? All right, good enough. Glad to have you on the team. I'll look forward to the Barrington tour. We will get it scheduled tonight. I did have asked someone members of the council to really might want to
Let me know prospective dates.
Okay.
And then how many, and then we can work with Mr. Missouri on. Okay.
And how do you want to work it with council? Because I wanted to have a couple of council members attend this tour, or at least have the opportunity to attend this tour in Barrington. But as far as their availability and like who you want to go, we talked about maybe not people on the building committee, but that's.
I will send a message to the manager and ask him to send out a message to people.
Okay.
And when is the tour?
So that's kind of the question. Do I pick a date or do I ask for some availability?
I'm the only one who doesn't work.
Yeah, I know they all
have full-time jobs.
I would suggest maybe a couple days, then we can get them back to the superintendent.
Okay.
They will need to be after school, so I would say kind of 3 o'clock on as a safe time, so probably not
Better for work.
but not 7 o'clock at night, because you may not be there. So I just want to, I think we can get to a solution, but it might just take a couple back and forth to kind of get to a.
And is this before November 8th we're talking?
I think you'd be hard pressed to get over there before the 8th unless you really want to tell the story before then. But
Okay.
just again, knowing all your schedules.
I think
and
I'd
then
like to get
their
them there
schedules.
before the 22nd.
I would think so.
Yeah, not necessarily for the presentation, but maybe that's actually, I would like that to be solidified, so it's in November 8th. By the way, remember the council, come with us for Barrington, we're all taking the tour. Yep, so, we can do that. So let's, why don't we look at between the 8th and the 22nd?
Yeah.
And ask what the superintendent's best thought is.
Okay.
And then we'll work off.
We'll go that one. Great.
Don,
Oh,
what?
oh, no, did Don have a question?
No, sorry, I said Don.
Oh,
Done.
Don.
Done.
Oh, I was gonna ask, when did you say you were gonna have the AERP schedule timeline available?
Well, when's your next meeting?
The fourth,
Next week, oh, is it the third?
yeah, we had,
It's an odd.
are we gonna, no,
We
are
have
we
a
sticking with
we have
that?
school committee meeting next.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's.
that's true.
Oh, so do we wanna,
I think it was because, I don't know why.
do we wanna do the second?
I think is everyone good with the second next week?
That's fine.
We're gonna be here.
We are anyway.
Yeah.
The goal was
Yeah.
the goal was to have something before the presentation.
Yeah,
You just
so,
have to post it Friday, so.
It'll be a slim agenda.
Yep. All right,
all right, so we'll go
So-
bi-weekly starting, we'll go back to back next week on the second, then we shift the bi-weekly deal and we're throwing in the extra meeting, which technically isn't a joint meeting, it's just a town
Yeah,
council
I
meeting.
think the next couple of weeks can be fairly
Are we
slim
gonna
agendas
invite-
focused on the
And
November
these
8th
scope of
meeting
this
and
meeting as well.
talking specifically.
No, I don't think, well,
All right,
that would be
so
up to
the
them.
next meeting is the
Yeah, you got a
second.
big spot. What's up?
I'm laughing at him.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying over here, so causing trouble again, sorry.
Okay. I know it's more meetings, I know there's a lot right now, but we're in the thick of it, so.
Is your RFQ for the architect, it's tailored to, both delivery methods, potential delivery methods?
We can be ambiguous on delivery method. I mean, personally, we don't think it should matter to the AE. With respect to the AE partner over there at the table. I think it's about the same amount of work, so, but if we do a queue, then we can also have that type of discussion. We would expect, no matter what, there'll be a fee discussion after selection, or at least after recommendation. And by then you will, this body will have kind of gone through that iteration of deciding whether to do the best method to the project and the community.
Before we move off that topic, one last thing is if you're interested in being part of the union selection, I don't necessarily have to be on it as the chair. I'm willing to relinquish my role, although I'm interested in it. I want to push this out to others. So, I know there's people here, there's points of people who have construction experience.
I don't know if I should be on it
But
though.
you
I
don't
might
necessarily
listen
have
in.
to.
Because I probably shouldn't be on a selection committee, but I would like to probably listen in.
The difficulty for you is you may have run
No,
fraud.
Yeah, so that's what I mean.
Still know everybody.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. So,
And I don't,
So-
selection wise.
I know, so.
I may
don't-
be able to
but
comment
if-
on the level of detail I've received in drawings from different AEs, if that's helpful to the.
Well,
Very helpful.
just so
Be
everyone
an
understands,
advisor.
we talked about having the small selection committee, but then it would come to the building committee for discussion and approval before it goes to the school committee for discussion and approval. So there's multiple steps, and even if you're not on the selection team, you'll have a chance to at least poke holes and say, did you think about this? What about this? And if you see any red flags, you can raise them there.
Yeah.
My hope is that the flags will be raised by the OPM team a little bit too early. All right, but I'll leave it as this, if you're interested and you want to be on that selection committee, please email me. Thanks, man.
Great. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we're moving the team updates and the work review. Bill, I didn't have anything specific for you tonight on the agenda. Hopefully I didn't have you.
No, and anything.
You and I
Can
can
we
talk
merge this
after.
yet?
Yeah, no, anything I have is related to some of the communications, marketing,
Okay, good.
logistics.
So we are gonna get into that. So first team update is finance team, so Harold?
Very quickly, we did meet today to discuss the meeting, the town council meeting concerning the bond. We had some great insights into it, and I think we're answering a lot of the questions that have come up. Next Tuesday, we'll finalize everything that we discussed tonight. One of the things that we looked at was sort of revamping how the tax was configured so that it's the exact same amount of tax rate, but it doesn't show any deficit. And little things that you can work on, but in general, it was a very productive meeting that we could really look at it a lot of different aspects of that town council meeting.
And you have another meeting next week.
Next week, today.
And then we'll have to think about too, how we, the finance team will lead them in, you know, to the presentation as well. Doesn't have to be the Luke Murray show.
Right.
So Luke, can I just, I know I'm not part of their team, but there is a meeting after Dr. Dixon had, you know, I think spoken at that, the town council, the town manager, finance director's presentation, talking about collaboration. We did get the invite, but I think it's, and I met with the town manager. I'll meet with him tomorrow morning, but I did say to him that I felt that, you know, we should drive that meeting. So he was dictating, and I know there was no malicious intent, but he sent out invites just to certain people. And I felt that you should identify who you want to bring at that meeting. And so I think it's important because that's about coming together on the finance. And so,
No, I think it's fair. I think part of the reasoning that Harold was thinking next week to invite the town manager,
but we have that meeting next week. too.
finance team. Well,
Not to the finance team,
It's the day
before that meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
now,
I just, okay.
if that's not gonna happen, he's not gonna
Right.
attend, then I'd be more in favor of the entire finance team going to him.
Well, I'm just saying is I just didn't want to put that on the table that we still need to figure out who do you want to bring to that meeting.
So have you officially invited? the
I-
town manager?
I didn't,
No, tomorrow I'll invite them. We should get a response back pretty
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah.
And I have a
Let me
meeting
know
with
what
the
the
finance.
response is, because then if he doesn't respond, then I'll respond back to Ben and say, well, I want to ensure, this is a team effort. We've always said this is, the finance team's there for a reason.
Mhm.
And so if he won't come to us, we're going to go to him. I mean, this is the part of the collaboration that has to happen. You guys have to-
yeah, I just don't want to waste time. I don't want to have a meeting, just have a meeting. So we have a meeting scheduled on the 3rd, I think. It's a Wednesday. I believe. Is that correct?
Well, it's sort of called the reconciliation meeting, and that-
Right, right.
that is to look at the financial funding plan that Harold and his group are working on, and what the town manager and the town finance director are working on, and just to compare the two plans and to see if there can be any reconciliation between the two plans, so that there's maybe one plan presented to the town council. I don't know if that's possible or
Well, I
not.
just want, I mean, I think we need the right players. I mean, the school, you know, my thought in this was Luke should identify who you want to attend that meeting.
Yeah, I think
I understand what,
one thought process was if he could come, the finance director ideally, to the team meeting,
Mhm.
get their kind of understanding of what the team thinks, and then come into the strategic meeting and say, okay, now you've heard what the team says, let's hammer this out.
Yeah.
And if we can't, then it's gonna be two separate presentations on the 8th. It's gonna be the way we see it and the way they see it. And unfortunately, the council kind of in the middle on picking, and that is what it is. I don't want to do that. I'd rather have one coordinated plan with the town and come in as a collaboration to say, here's how we make this work.
Well, that's why I wanted to do it before that is needed.
Yeah, I think, you know, as opposed, so you'd keep it that strategy. As long as we can-
I would rather keep it to the Tuesday, a week from today, having them come over, we all discuss it, different ideas, put it all together, and then for the executive meeting, the next day, we are clear on where we're gonna go, if we're gonna go in separate directions.
and I would just clearly, you know, just when you invite them, I would just make sure that it's a dialogue.
Sure.
Because some things I hear,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying it isn't, but I think that's important so that it isn't just somebody regurgitating a bunch of information to them, that they're active participants in it. Because that's something that I've heard, that, you know, there's a lot of presentations. It truly is a dialogue and you know, bouncing back ideas, and so
I
that we
agree.
can come up to one.
That's a fair point. It's been a little bit of talking to each other as opposed to just saying, all right, how do we make this work? Like, let's just dig in and see if we can make it work.
Right.
Like it or hate it, there's a way that works best. There is no ideal here. The ideal is you get it all for nothing. That is the ideal. It's not gonna happen. So what's the next best thing? You know? Anything else on the finance team now?
That's it.
Anything else from the finance team? And did you feel like today was a little productive, Kathy? Yeah. So hopefully we'll, you know, today was really about just kind of understanding with the town presentation. Yeah. John, anything? You're pulling out of you.
Nope, I'm good.
All right, we'll go on the B, communication and logistics team, which is now merged.
Yay, it's
Yeah.
official?
Oh,
yeah.
So, last meeting, we merged them, so you guys are.
I think you should be the leader.
You're the
right
team.
now.
Now I know our motivation.
Kidding.
You're co-chair, or whatever you
Oh,
want to call it.
So I had
Team leader.
I had a communications meeting on, last Tuesday, and we had a pretty good group of people, pretty diverse group of people, mix of people who sit on this committee, people who are part of the community, people who have kids in the schools, people who don't have kids in the schools. So we had a nice, like, mix of people. We talked about a number of topics, and I'm gonna let Phil kind of take the lead in a second. But, I think I told this committee that our, CTE program, the marketing and graphics program was designing logos. They presented logos to us. Phil then had his team take the logos, combine them together, and then they had a few versions they had worked on and then shared the logos back with our committee. So he's got some logos to share with you. And Phil, you kind of explain what that's all about.
Sure, I'm just passing around a color and a black and white version. So this was the revised version after some of the comments from the committee. It's just, oh, I'm gonna do that.
This will make a nice tattoo. Lee?
Left arm or right arm?
So certainly offer some commentary and feedback. This is sort of a aggregated logo from the student submissions, comments that we received from the committee, and then our take on just wrapping it up. There's just a color and a black and white version, so you could just see how it looks. But we did land on this logo that now is the time. And that sort of stuff. This is the project, now is the time. You know, now is the time to be definitive about what you're about to do. Certainly, we are happy to continue to revise this. You know, we have the time, we have material that is going out, and you know, after the council vote and as you start ramping up to a bond referendum vote, we can continue to work on that. One of the things we talked about was, I'd probably say in about 3 weeks, we'd like to show you some ideas on a website. So we need about 3 weeks to do that. So that started. And then we talked about the half-size flyers, which we're still putting together.
So we have the half-size flyer that we distributed at the event that Amy attended and that Luke and I did. The only thing we had said was the flyer is busy because all I did is take a big flyer and shrink it down. And so Phil was trying to find a way to streamline that flyer so that visually it wouldn't be overwhelming to the people who are receiving it.
Can I ask a question? What was the decision to make the flyer smaller? Or was it just cost? Or-
Well, so I didn't want to, truth be told, it had to do with cost because, well, I'm using color ink to print these off because I didn't think it looked good in black and white. And so if I'm running full sheets of color ink, I get half as many flyers to pass out. So I cut them in half so that I could print 2 on a page.
I don't know, I just found it, like, even passing them out, and I know that they do, but I just don't find them as impactful, like, in such a small format. It's good if you want to dig the information, but it's not as visually, like, impactful. And
Well, so I guess we have to think
understand
about
that.
the purpose, right? Because a lot of them, and this is not being disrespectful, but a lot of them are going to be taken, read, and thrown away, right? Like not a lot of people are going to keep them. Even the ones that we're putting under windshield, some people are not even going to read them. Not because we don't want them to, they're not going to. So I guess my fear was we're working on a tight budget. I didn't want to be running 300-400 copies, full sheet papers, if I can get the same message across with something a little bit smaller.
The
I
good
don't
news
know how
is
others
under,
feel about that, that was just my.
it's under Don's account, so it gets deducted from his
Really?
paycheck. So we have a new printing
So the next
system,
version-
so
The next version is postcard
We
size.
go- you know.
So I want to pass out this as well. This is not something, this is just something somebody did in the office just to see. But there may come a time where
They combine the
you
three or
want
four.
to have a door tag, we'll work on that. But one thing that I noticed when these guys were working on it, they did put this message up at the top. And we didn't talk too much about how that message should be delivered between now and November 23rd.
About
And-
whether or not we're specifically targeting the community to reach out
To the
to
council
the
first.
council.
We never really drove that to the ground. And it just came back up when I saw them put that on there. And that should be something we could talk about. Because the last thing that the guys are working on, and gals, are these two-sided flyers that are school-specific, which I want to make sure we're on the same page. I probably would make it a full two-sided sheet.
I think that's different, because we're
Okay.
passing them out at school, giving them to kids. I think that's different.
And I'll just pass these around. This is something, we're certainly getting them all together now, but this is just one side of one. The middle school would be on one side. The school-specific elementary would be on the other side.
And then for the middle school,
Back side of the middle school one would be the high school one. And on the back side of the high school one would be the general one. So that's what we're looking to add. And if you look on that, there's a little bit more specific information on these school-specific ones that talk about dollars. These are not the actual dollars for that scope of work. That's just a placeholder. But how much detail do we want to put on this school-specific one in terms of what the investment is? We're doing it by percentage. And we do think we probably want more pictures, particularly at the middle school and at the high school where we have that.
Right?
Should the OPM be involved in this in deciding what goes out to the voters?
We're not at voter stage yet, so just keep in mind, this is just general information. for the
Okay.
community. They could be involved, I think, more in the ballot race, as
And-
we get there, and certainly request their input based on other citizens.
So the question is, what do they find effective in the way of handing out things to the voters? Is this what they need, or do they want a different form?
Who's they?
OPM.
Do you want to weigh in? I don't know how much you.
Yeah, I mean, typically, again, as we work for usually the school building committee of the district, we're not typically out there, or we're not involved in that distribution and the kind of.
But do you plan it? Do you present the idea of what would be effective? What did you do in Barrington?
So Barrington, they had a group that was outside of their school building committee and their school committee that ran their yes.
so we're gonna have to do the same thing here.
You guys here, you guys are an information. You're not finding how to vote, same vote, right?
Right.
The pro folks are gonna take that on and they're gonna fund that separately, so just campaign for and all that. So what we've seen is, I would say, as working with the district and SBC, is we're doing more community information events, presentations to different groups throughout the community, whether it's in a large auditorium or it's more direct conversations, one-on-ones. In East Providence, the superintendent probably went to 30 festivals over the course of the summer before the vote happened. In Barrington, what our role was as the OPM was, we were in 3 large public meetings in the high school auditorium where each meeting we talked about, one was about design, one was about finance, one was about process. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of go through that process. With this really being, I think, you guys generate a lot of good collateral. That is just a question of how can you put it out? And what do you- I don't mean to be ambiguous with the answer.
No,
I think each community is a little bit different.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I told you what worked in Newport was them standing in front of the liquor store with the flyers.
Yep.
And that's just how they did it. We made big boards, We put the boards at the liquor store and at the supermarket, and they would just stand out there and give out the flyers.
So the first step, just to back up, we have print materials in front of us. Are you done with the print
Yes.
materials description? All right, so I guess, so go.
I was just gonna ask about the print materials. Can I just say two things? I didn't know what other people
Yeah,
thought about this.
absolutely. Go ahead.
So I'm looking at this one here, which I love. I think it's great, the door one. The only thing I would ask is, one of the things that I found that parents at both situations that I was at were really interested in was how much the state was contributing. Like, the one where it says that the state is like 53 something million or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Not that 86 or 89 million dollars means anything to me relative to whether it's 50 million or 89. But when I find out that the state is paying for this big chunk, and it was something that told the parents, so even if you keep it as 89 million, but just a little piece of the state piece versus
So there were two sides to that. I only printed one.
okay, so that was on the other
So
side.
on the door hanger, you could have that two sides, and then now it would be, hey, let's see that 58 one on the front. Don't put that on the back.
Yeah,
But
that's the first thing. And the second thing is this particular picture here has been one that people are like, I don't understand this picture. Like, that has been
I agree with
a
that.
conversation each time about, the words are going across it. It's kind of got a different coloring to it that I think it makes it unclear as to what it actually is at middle school. The pictures from Barrington Middle School, where like I saw collaboration like opportunities where they had like the flexible seating, and they talked about the moving of the chairs and the tables together quickly in there, and the picture showed that in their presentation. I think it was a newspaper article, wasn't it, that we looked at?
Yeah, it was like a journal sort of walkthrough.
Yeah. And then the other one was like the boards, those boards that, I know we talked about it being like divider boards or whatever. Those things, as a parent and as an educator, stood out to me as like, yeah, those are the things I want to see in my school. So I think being really careful and selective about the pictures so that somebody who's not in education is going to understand what this is.
Don has asked for interior renderings that are done in a different way that are probably more like what you were describing. That is a more unique view that would be hard to.
Yeah. Otherwise, I love both the ideas. I think they're great.
Maybe we can use actual photos of either schools you've worked on, or even like some of the stock photos that we used when we did the original meetings where people were looking at pictures and saying what they liked and didn't like.
Yeah.
Just to give people a sample of what those kind of collaboration spaces could look like.
Along those lines, I would just suggest, I find that showing the existing in this small of a format, it's not impactful. Like, it doesn't really tell me much. So it's almost like, imagine the possibilities and show a really nice picture of what the future looks like and keep it simple and clean versus trying to make too much case on something at this scale.
That's meant to sort of touch them emotionally.
Yeah.
So we don't need
Honestly, I
to.
look at those existing pictures and I think, that's not that bad.
Yeah, on the cafeteria one, I agree.
Well, that's
That would
that's
be
the
the
Coventry
only
mindset, right?
Yeah.
That was just our first
Yes,
attempt,
yes.
and it was,
Overall, I
we
love
have
the
to go
idea.
through this a dozen times.
Those nice big screens they have.
I think people wanted to.
So let me do this to just to create some more, because can we just take them in order? I want to hear, since the logo, we have the logo, then we have each print piece. I'd like to just zip it around, get comments on all three things individually, so we're not all over. So the logo, I'm interested in your comments. So Ann, I'll start with you as far as the logo.
Well, I know when we first discussed the logo in the marketing group, it was thought that the hammer looked like a cross. So I think that was changed. But the logo in this picture on Feinstein Middle School is not the same logo, the orientation of the words, et cetera, that we're seeing on the logo page. So there's not an alignment between this logo and that logo.
And
Yes,
it's turn.
Huh?
I think it's supposed to be this one. Like, turn the page.
Okay.
There you go.
So,
Now they all-
and Dr. Dixon is right. She called me that the logo, this logo sheet is our most updated version. This was done earlier
Oh,
today.
Okay,
So,
all right. I will.
you got the heads up?
yeah, I got,
So we're looking at just the logo now?
yes.
Okay. So, I like the investment coverage of schools at the top of the logo. We still have this hammer that looks like a cross. I didn't mention this, but someone else did in the marketing team. By the way, I'd like to mention that when we had the marketing group, Don did say it was the best marketing team meeting he ever had, and he did not mention that when he gave his opening statement.
I was saving that for the end, Ian.
I don't have anything else to say about the logo.
And throwing shade on them.
Just talking about logo, then we stay up with it. Okay.
So we
There's
have
a logo that you can
cross-
turn in any way you want. okay?
Yeah, there you go.
So the children be upside
So
down.
you like the investment commentary schools, you're worried about the cross in general.
I'm not worried, someone mentioned that.
Someone mentioned it.
But it's a different hammer image. The other one had like the hammer was sitting
Yeah,
low.
yeah.
This looks like a hammer to me.
Yeah,
The other one looked different. It's a different, he switched it up.
Kathy. Yeah.
I like it, except if I were an elementary parent, I would wonder, what the heck is the acorn for? That's just me, because I know it's where naughty ogres, but I always think of that as a high school, but I get why they.
I think
put
that's
it
part of
in
the
there.
issue. We need to make that the brand for the community,
Yeah,
you know, like the
So-
Ochre Pride and.
And the acorn was something that the kids worked on because an acorn represents like new growth.
oh, I
And
get,
so-
I get the symbolism and all
Yeah.
that, but I'm just talking if I were a parent who didn't know much about
Yeah.
the history of Covington. I mean, I like it. I still like the tree that we have on
Mhm.
stationery or whatever, because it sounds like it's roots and
Mhm.
and all that stuff. But outside of that, I like it. It's growing on me. It's, when I first saw it, I didn't say, oh my God, I love this.
Well, the color scheme is not like vibrant, right? It's a
That's what
little
it
bit,
is. Yeah,
Subtle.
it's very
Subtle.
subtle.
so maybe the feedback is make it a little bit more.
I don't know, but
I don't know
it
either.
it doesn't jump out at me. And, but I'm not sure a logo needs to, but I think it does. You think it does jump out at you?
I think it should.
Oh, yeah.
It's a branding.
Yeah, I think it is the palette of colors.
Maybe if
I
we
like
just make
the
them
kind of
brighter.
colors, but maybe a brighter something.
Because I think what Phil did, I don't want to speak on Phil's behalf, is somebody was talking about Christmas tree colors, and I think he was trying to like not go that way.
Not go that way, yeah.
But your comments are all helpful. We can,
Yeah,
we
so
can-
Kathy's comment is likes it overall, but color scheme may need to be adjusted
Yeah.
to be more vibrant.
I second that, Kathy.
Oh, you do?
We got a
Okay.
second. We got a
All right.
second on the vibrancy. All right, Lee.
I'm wondering if the colors on that detail might be the colors of a particular country's flag. And would somebody raise an objection?
You know, any particular flag?
Don't you remember Sheldon Cooper, no plumbing flags?
Oh, God, come on.
Oh,
No.
I go to sleep with those. Okay,
I
now,
actually, because I always thought of Alfa Romeo when I saw
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But I guess I have some ideas with the colors,
Okay.
which may make this feel differently, but I don't want to, I want you to
Yeah.
continue.
Okay.
did we do something like red, white, and blue?
How about red, white, and black?
I think the reason why we went with the red and the green, because those were the town
We
colors,
want
those were on
Okay,
the.
now, I hate to say it at this point, but the best slogan is the one that has an action at the end of the slogan. When I send out a text message and I'm looking for a response back, I always finish it with a question. So the person says, oh, I got to respond. So, am I right? You noticed that, huh? Okay,
That's right.
so,
I just hit
I
delete.
just, I was gonna say, I just delete on.
you too, huh?
No, I never.
Okay, so use it. Okay, so when we say now is the time, this, to me, this is going nowhere. If we change it and we say the time is now, we leave them with the action verb, now. What do you think?
What are any others on the committee think of that? Changing up from now is the time, so the time is now.
No, yeah, the time is now.
The time is now.
Or a question mark, the time is now.
That's a bit
No.
more.
No,
No.
no.
Exclamation
I
point.
feel the time is now is a bit more powerful than now.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
All right, so
One in a row, baby.
is everyone in agreement to?
Yeah.
I'm available. for-
Stop by your head.
Any opposed to that suggestion? All right, you got that. Anything else, Lee, before I move on? Or you guys-
No, this is great.
All right, Alita?
I guess I like it. I like the words. My mind works different, but our students designed it and it's beautiful to me.
Well, that's why I didn't want to even
So
say
different
anything,
matters.
because I don't want to hurt a student, you know?
Well, it's not
And
any
it was-
one, there's like 3 or 4 designs
Oh,
blended
there were.
together here.
Okay, that are blended, okay, that makes it a little.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
I
right,
mean,
so
it
this is like
doesn't
a
really-
group
This
thing.
is a democratic design, right? We incorporate the students, the building committee.
All right, then I
Yeah, I won't
I
lie.
was like, I
Nothing
didn't
about
even
it
want to
makes me
say
go,
anything
"Whoa,"
because it
but I
was
mean,
student, you know, it was like, oh.
We
well,
purposely did it that way,
Oh,
so it
good.
wouldn't
Okay, I didn't
sit
know
with
that.
one.
I might not have been here.
I mean, I might have missed the initial discussions behind the tools. It's just kind of a weird mix to me.
Yeah, I think that had to do with construction,
Mhm.
letting people know
This is a
the time is
construction
now, invest in Coventry schools for what?
I would have done Bob the Builder.
You would have done what?
That might be trademark.
That's why you're sitting down there and.
Came from like one of the students as an
Actually, that, the tools came from us.
Okay, because I just figured like maybe there's a better center backdrop. in
The other image,
tools.
the
Like,
other image
they
that
don't
somebody had
sound-
suggested at one of the meetings was like
Shove.
a building or a shovel or something like
Hard hat.
that.
Yeah.
Bob the Builder.
Then
Well,
I
maybe
think
one of the
that-
suggestions is play a little bit with the tools that are in
Yep.
there,
Yeah,
and broadly, maybe
Or
come up with a couple of alternate scenarios.
Are you suggesting, like Bob the Builder with a shovel upright?
It was
What- what
What about the
in-
building to say,
That would be
yes, we
so
can, can we build it?
what about like something like, I don't know, like
How
a
do you think,
crane
Joe?
or like,
No, it's
Yeah,
wonderful.
so I think
it's a good idea.
I'm gonna try some other things.
That would be
yeah,
nice.
like a steel structure or something maybe?
So, Alita, anything else?
No, sorry.
So, no, that's
No,
okay.
yes,
So
that's right.
the suggestion I got from you was, look at the tool
We'll skip
format.
Good.
Something better.
I actually like it a lot. I thought the colors, I love the colors, I love the blues, I like it a lot.
Okay,
Maybe
you know,
that's because
You
I'm a
also
Western
keep your
person.
Christmas decorations.
I do, I am absolutely.
Not
a
this
Christmas
year.
kid.
Not-
I
not this.
absolutely am a Christmas
Are they
kid.
up already?
I have my
Four trees
Christmas
down.
tree, the day after Halloween.
So I
Amy,
think
I
one
knew
thing
there was
I'll pull out of
something.
that one, Phil, is come back with the same logo compared to the new logos, because we always have the option to go back.
Sure.
I can like multiple though too.
No,
So
that's true, but I
something-
think it's good for you to kind of see where
Yeah.
you start. If you like this,
Yeah,
you still like that, and one like that, and we know where we hit all marks, so.
I love the
Don.
change of the word.
I'll pass to Craig. I've been playing with this for a little while. I'll let somebody else.
No, I like the comments that are made. I like the recommendations and, so I'm excited to see what you come back with.
Harold?
The first thing that came to my mind was hammer and sickle, Soviet Union, so, but I studied a lot about that, so I just left that. go.
Next.
Next, so one suggestion I
Thank you,
have,
Harold.
one suggestion is maybe use that really big thing and maybe put it in there, the glass, it's sort of the main part of the building, and you can put that in there.
The tree that we have in the glass
Mhm.
on the entrance.
That's kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah.
A frosted glass.
See the frosted glass in the entrance window? Right over here.
It's like-
Oh, this,
It's
oh, they're putting that
yeah.
in there.
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
That is a nice, I like that.
Yeah. All right, I got some ideas.
All right.
We can pass it along.
John?
I like this originally, I like all the ideas.
Jay, you want to give 2 cents since you're here?
Yeah,
I
like this sign. But I like the signs now.
So the only comments I have, I agree.
You started this whole
On
thing.
color vibrancy, I would go punch it out.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more in line. I know green is Coventry color, that's a good town color, but when I think of CHS and I think of Coventry schools, I think of red and white. Because, graduation, you know, all that red and white, so, you know, maybe something.
If you look at the town logo, there's green on it.
Oh, the elephant, you mean?
No, no, no.
Yeah.
No, it's
Like,
it's the actual town.
The
logo.
town
town
seal,
logo.
the seal, the town seal.
Doesn't the town feel, oh, what does it
Seal.
look like?
Green, red.
I have some
You
ideas,
already
we can
forgot
always
about the
come
green.
back.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
So that would be my suggestion. The only other thing I would say is, I kept playing with some is like, a lot of times, you know, just incorporating stuff people identify already, and they know the Coventry seat. So maybe there's something there,
No.
but I think it's important to kind of draw attention, this is Coventry schools. Nobody's seen this logo, they don't know what this is. But if we weave in something they already identify with, they might go, oh, that's school. Now it's integrated in this logo, so that's.
Yeah. Oh, that's all good feedback, I appreciate it.
What if we had
I
like a
don't
falcon
believe
rather
there
than-
is.
That's what I'm saying too.
I think it's
I'm wondering, well, that's like a.
Confusing.
That's like a
Yeah,
brain.
it's too much. Confusing.
Yeah, I'll take this to Don, is there any significance to the leaves that the students had explained, you know, when this was?
They just wanted to show growth, like a sprout coming out of an acorn, just to show like the growth.
It should have been an oak tree.
Yeah, that's just what they designed.
Would it be better with brighter colors?
Brighter colors would probably make it pop more. You could have almost the same exact
You don't
design
want
with
my
bright
opinion,
colors.
bright colors, what I'm saying, because I don't particularly. Yeah. I'm a simplist, like there's a Chevy, reason the Chevy bow tie is to the test of time, it's simple. It's, people are just like, that's it. So with logos, I find simpler the better, but I understand, but
I remember.
there is student work in here, and I don't wanna count on that, like, there is a reason why, you know, we're gonna make this work. But, and I appreciate the student work on that, so, you know, I think we all do. So I don't think we're looking to completely.
That's you had that as a photo.
Anything else on the logo before we move on? All right, so we go to the first print piece, the large flyer here. And I'll do the same thing, Ian, any particular thoughts?
Yeah.
That's the first time I dropped that.
I'm all done with this now.
All right, so on school-specific ones, we will avoid abbreviations.
The other thing is that, this focuses on demolition, reconfiguration. It really doesn't focus much on programming, creating one safe, one safe and dry environment, which we've always talked about. It doesn't really talk about, the improvements to the learning spaces for the students. It seems to be more mechanical, there's more, things here, buildings, but nothing about the students. So I feel a little bit of a problem about that. The term student centric, I'm not sure what people will get out of the word centric. What does that mean? I don't know what it means.
And those are those educational enhancements. So maybe we need to do a better job of either using a different grouping of words like programmatic enhancements, educational enhancements, teaching and learning.
I mean,
Education improvement.
even MET, I know it's in the name of that. Yeah, MET, that's another one. People won't know. And
Heating and
most
air
people know
conditioning.
Gotcha,
yeah.
heating and air conditioning. Yep.
But student centric, I think that we need to work that, because we're building these 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8th grade, we're creating all this learning environment space, collaboration space, and it doesn't come through here that the learning environment is going to be different for students. And people will walk away that we're tearing down, adding, but what are people going to get for it? The next thing is that when you see the price tag of 80 million, this does not, might not jive with people because the whole bond is 89 million. And so what they're saying is 80 million here, and then they get confused about the numbers. Under the photographs of academic union entrance, there's a lot of space here for an entrance to a building. Not a lot, I think it could be used better to focus on maybe what these, library areas are gonna look like, what the parking areas are gonna look like, but I think there's too much space used. Space is important on a flyer, and when we focus on the entrance, I think it's a problem. And then I do agree that when we propose collaboration space, it's very difficult to understand what we're actually looking at. I mean, I've seen some letters above collaboration, I'm not even sure what the word is above it. And I don't think people will get a sense of how the space is going to be different. And I agree that we don't necessarily have to say existing, but we need to focus on what's new and what's good for the students. So that's my comment about that.
Thank you, Judith. Very amount of comments. Kathy?
Yeah, the only thing, I really thought about, I agree with Ann on the abbreviation stuff and all that. That second picture down here definitely wouldn't work for me. I looked at that and I said, what the heck is going on here? I mean, I knew, just because I know, but if I were a person looking at it, I'd be like, And it doesn't make you feel like, wow, that's something wonderful. So even if it's not what the design really is going to be, pick something that, I kind of like this picture though, because that really gives them an idea that something new is going to happen. So I like the entrance.
So I
I would
think
just pick
we
up
need
order.
interior
Yeah.
views that equal the exterior
Exactly.
view, and then I'd probably have 4 of them on there.
Right.
So this could afford to get smaller.
Yep.
These were interior views, so
Yeah, and you might not need the
we're gonna delete the
yeah.
existing.
Because you don't have existing here to compare, so just keep it the same, but make it something that, really looks exciting. I mean, even the journal article on Lee's Providence High School, I mean, what they showed was the interior corridors, they were just beautiful. It was like I was there. I mean, it was so exciting that those pictures were great. So whatever we put, I know it's not really gonna be what's there, but that's the way.
Sure, yeah, okay.
So does everyone, like, before we go on, does everyone kind of, what I've heard a few times is no one likes the bottom picture, right? We're gonna do something more impactful, visual. So does everyone agree with that? We'll just take that one off the table, so that, so that way that comment's registered. All right, Lee?
And I always enjoy your recommendations. You just hit so many good things.
You said the time is now. You made us turn a corner.
Yeah. He's the one with
She
the
always
brain.
does that to me. Okay, so what I'm gonna suggest right off the bat is take from project description all the way down to new academic and just delete the whole thing. Get it out of there. It doesn't, you're talking $80 million for the middle school, because this is the Alan Sean Feinstein Middle School. It's not $80 million for the middle school. It's $80 million for the whole bond. Now, as Ann said, they're not gonna understand student-centric, MEP engineering, blah, 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 blah. What we want to do is we want to have this picture up here, and then you're going to take a picture of this, and you're going to go like this, and you're going to give me an interior drawing of the building. And then below that, you're going to flip it back up, but you're going to take this wall off, and I'm going to see some classrooms in there. And that is going to sell, that is what the voter is going to see what they're going to get. This stuff up here. And now the other thing I think I'd like to emphasize, did you know that when they push the cart with the food from the kitchen to the cafeteria, it doesn't go around the corners very well. It's difficult to get that cart. We should have a race sometime to see how we can get it, how quickly
Thanks for
we
the
can get it.
flyer, Lee.
It's really bad. I mean, the
Thanks for the
things in
flyer.
this middle school are unbelievable.
I know you're
So-
hungry now.
So maybe we can have something about, the cafeteria and stuff, and get pictures, that this is what the cafeteria is gonna look like. In there, and that's what I suggest.
So you want it more visual, is what we got.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. The
So-
time is now.
So you want the thing, your recommendation is get rid of a lot of the text, more visually centered. I would say that the 80 million is what's being spent at the middle school, although I could see the confusion, so we've got to try our best to convey that.
Yeah. exactly.
Because it is confusing a little bit to say 80 million and somebody's like, oh, wait a minute, they're saying 89. They're not, I know there's a back to this, so that may explain it, so that's your challenge, is making sure that's clear.
The question is, what do I get? If I vote yes, what do I get? And I don't see it.
And we get surprised. Alita,
I might leave some words. And I would probably, on the description, I would just probably flip the order, like of them, like the new three-story academic wing would be the first thing, right? It's top or so. I mean, I do think it's worth, to your point, what do I get? People will, read that in addition to the photos. And then I do kind of, the 80 million does throw people off, and maybe this pie chart isn't the right pie chart. Maybe it's something that kind of has the full 89 million, and it highlights this is the percentage that's spent at the middle school, and then the other schools have their little slice of the pie, so people realize this is the main focus of the project, more so than the categories, because again, like, to Ann's point, you're gonna change some of these descriptions so that you're not necessarily saying demolish sixth grade, you're gonna say, construct more educational enhanced spaces or something like that. So we're gonna get some of these words into the description part, and then maybe that's the pie chart, and then maybe that kind of carries through, not necessarily then, I don't know how to make it on the other side, these would be the individuals.
so on the other side of this would be Black Rock.
Yeah.
Up the hill, high.
Yeah, so I don't know how to kind of make that pie chart kind of, correlate to that, the flip side, but, you guys can. But that would be my thought. Again, that's where it is. But just the base 80 million will throw everybody off, with the 89 being the whole bond value, I think. Yeah. So just that doesn't need to be there as well.
That's a good point.
Based on what you said, Alita, I'm almost thinking that this table over here that says student centered 31 or whatever, you almost could have two pie charts. One is a pie chart for the middle school, and the other pie chart is the whole project. I mean, people can look at a pie chart and they can immediately see some numbers there. It eliminates using some of these words that people don't really understand. So that table could go and be replaced by another pie chart that just talks about the middle school, and the other pie chart talks about the whole project. And that's just the story.
Getting all that done. Got it? All right, Amy?
I already commented on it, but I will tell you, one of the things that came up a lot when I was talking with people is everybody brought up East Providence. They kept saying, oh, like East Providence, oh, did you see their school? So like, to me, they have pictures in their head when I'm talking to parents about what East Providence got. They didn't bring up any of the other projects, but did you hear it at all from people at the table? Like, I heard it all, like every time.
Very good at
Yes, it was really big. So I think they must have done something very well around, like, visually being able to get everybody to see it. Because you can't just say numbers, like, that isn't gonna make people bring that up. So they were looking at our charts and they're like, oh, like East Providence did. That happened multiple times. So I think the visuals, the pictures, what will we be getting is huge, like being able to get that out there.
The more the.
Yeah.
Done?
I pretty much agree with everything everybody said. The only thing I disagree with Lee and agree with Alita is I think a project description does have to stay in, just needs to be retooled a little bit. But I wouldn't take all the words off this page.
Right?
Just, along with what Amy was saying, I think that's something that's lacking in our community. I think there's pockets of it, and I think when you go to the Fish Hill and you see, like when I meet people and I talk to people, and we saw it at the truck and treat, there's pride, but when we're talking about this, I think that's the part we have to, like what you're talking about, when people in East Providence, and like you said, we were talking before about like the townie, people are proud. I think that's why, I think it's the branding opportunity for us here is to get that ochre and make that synonymous with anybody that's in Coventry is important. But I think that's something that we really have to tap into, that pride, because I feel that while there's so many positive things in our schools and in our community, people hop on the negatives. And I think this is an opportunity for us to tap into what Amy's talking about. That's what you see, pride. I live in Attleboro, the schools, that's not a very affluent community. It's like Coventry, mixed, but people are so proud about this construction project. So I think again, I know I'm a big picture guy, I'm not a detail. But the other thing that's important to me, like I know we're talking about flyers, but I grab stuff and I toss stuff, right? Like I grab everything. I take everything anybody gives me, but I very rarely look at it. But one thing that I've done is, like, I do keep is people have done things, and I don't know how it plays into this, but like playing cards, right? Like, or little trading cards. And I just think that it may be a novelty, but the bottom line is that I think if we could market this through like playing cards or trading cards, it's gonna, because I hang on to those. I put them on I don't know why, but I put them on the fridge. And that's just me, but I feel that to me would be something that is much better than a flyer. A flyer is going to target some people, but I find that, like, kids drive the information. We know students are better teachers to students, and they market. Our CTE kids, our career tech ed students are going down, or they're coming. Our eighth graders are coming up today, and they're marketing like our students. And so if we can get students, I also think, I'm interested in what my kids talk about. So I just think that's a population. I know we can't, we have to be careful when we use students, but I feel that there's nothing wrong with students saying, wow, talking about a school or potential changes. So anyway,
One of the things we played around with the circle was we could have these printed on wooden tokens. So you could sort of, becomes
it's like a novelty, but
thing.
you hang on to them. I do.
Anyway.
Enough for a poster? Could be a poster?
It could be a coaster,
Christmas one.
Christmas ornament.
Yeah, I like
I
that.
like
Second
that.
ornament.
Me too.
So, yeah, I'm not short of ideas, and obviously neither are you,
Yeah.
so it's all good.
Harold?
I just want to remind everybody there's a budget here.
Harold, you sound like me.
We haven't talked numbers yet.
I overall liked it. I don't think anybody cares about what we're demoing out. But I think we don't have enough information for what is included in the three-story academic lab. So I put a three-story academic lab, new state-of-the-art science laboratories, the different spaces we're putting in and stuff like that. I agree with Ann here. I think this is kind of, even for me, someone who knows what you're talking about, I'm like, okay, well, you're spending $25 million on MEP engineering, 24 million. Okay, that doesn't necessarily tell me much about it. I don't get much from that. So I think that is necessary. I mean, I could say $80 million, this is the percentages here. I think that's enough.
I look at things as, I just try to step back from the project and just put myself in a position of parent with a couple of kids and a life and a dog and a mortgage and everything else. I come home or I go to a fair and I grab this. And I'm like, oh, what's this? And I'm gonna probably have 10 seconds to make an impression. And I don't think I'm gonna read most of this. I kind of agree with the group. I think it's visually impactful. I think if you're gonna say a couple of the improvements that are here, it should be associated with a picture. Show me what the cafeteria is like. Show me what a classroom looks like. New classrooms, boom. New cafeteria, boom. If you want to talk about mechanicals and stuff, do it in a way that's, but I agree. I don't think a lot of this has to be here. One of the comments I did get a lot, I think this picture at the trunk or tree
Got the most attention.
got the most attention. Most people, the kids would look at it and go, you know what they did? They read the middle school here, and they were like, that's the middle school? That's not the middle school. They're like, that's gonna be a middle school if this bond goes through. And that started the conversation. Like, this is the bag of possibilities. This is what could be. And I think that's really what this should be, is this is the bag of possibilities here, if you move forward. And so, and the website, if we develop, and it has some good information now, but I think it's brought up a little bit, higher class, like putting that front and center here. Big, the website should be big. If we want to do a QR code, that's fine too, if we feel we have the real estate for it, but getting people then driven to the website, I think is key.
Anything Phil develops is multifunctional. It's a social media post, it's a flyer, it's a website, everything is multifunctional.
And I don't see, I don't see a website, I don't see those research materials. I think it's things like just driving. Because I don't really care. I'm not trying to educate the voter off this. I just want them to go seek out more information. It's like us picking out candy or going to Fish Hill. And then you're just getting people like warmed up, like, what's that project? Oh, I've heard about that. Let me go check it out. You know, so, sorry, John, go ahead.
Also, I think the oak tree can be a big eye catcher, so try to make that from a finger smudge to an actual oak tree.
What's that?
In the window?
Oh, in the
Across
window,
glass,
in the glass,
across the
okay.
glass. Yeah, try to make that stand out a little more.
Gotcha.
Because I think that'll be something that will grab somebody's attention.
You know, it's funny, if you look at most marketing pieces, like postcards, will have one image and like a very little amount of text. It's like, they don't care. They, you know, like a big postcard, they send them in the mail because they just know you're gonna pick it up and throw it in the garbage. But all they want you to do is say, oh, like, big price tag, like, you know, get 4 fertilizations for $20. You know, well, maybe I should go check that out on the website. Anyway, I wish this was gonna be fun. Last piece, which is the door hanger.
And again, that was just an idea that one of the guys had. I don't know if you're ready for the door hanger yet.
Yeah, the door hanger thing came up in a conversation. It wasn't like something we teased out a ton. And I think Phil had one of his people kind of just run with the idea of mocking up what one would potentially look like. I don't think we even really had a conversation
No, we
about.
haven't. The only reason why I brought it is because of what they put on the top as a topic of more discussion yourself.
I would generally say this and this probably go more hand in hand. So once you refine this,
Mhm.
you know,
That follows along.
Do others agree with that? Then I kind of see this, like, first thing is, I don't want to put all the financial information on a door hanger at all, like, you know, on any of these documents. Like, I appreciate people want to know. I want them to go find the cost. I want them to be interested enough to go find what their individual cost is, not, like, I want them to be inspired by the project, not be like, put off by the price tag initially.
Yeah, I think the graphics on the door hanger are just to kind of show what a door hanger would potentially look like, not necessarily these
Yeah,
specifics.
and again, this top message, I keep going back, does your council person know what you think? Are we interested in trying to drive that message home over the next 20 days? And if we are, how? And what does that say? Call 1-800 Coventry, whatever.
I would, so I'll put it out as a conversation, so is that one feedback I've gotten or seen, whatever, is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if council's gotten a lot of emails on this. So
So do we think that
it
that
would be
impacts
helpful, I
the-
think, for people to definitely email and support. That's what I leave it and pitch it to the group. What are your thoughts?
I feel like the more negative people would be more prone to email than positive. If you kind of made a campaign to tell your council people what you think, the no's would jump right on it, and the yeses would be less likely to do
Say
it.
anything.
Yeah, I think that has to be like a targeted campaign.
Yeah, so I think that's the danger of that.
I don't even know if people would understand the question. It's like, what do they think about what?
So they don't know the process.
They don't know, they don't know about the bond. I mean, you might say, ask your town council to support the school bond. I mean, that's a direct question. And it has to do with the school bond. But I don't think that the council person know what you think. It's a question like, what do you think about what? The logo was very big, takes up a lot of valuable space. And I don't think that it's very useful information to spend valuable space to talk about Coventry taxpayers running school improvement projects through 22 different schools. They really won't understand that at all. So, I mean, I would eliminate that whole section in there that shows the map with little pins for projects and the 22 minus 0. I don't think that is useful information on the door hanger.
I think
I
we've
agree.
established that the door hanger's out right now. I think what we're really on is, do we want to have, and I think this is tricky, because again, this campaign right now, is information. So even saying something like, go email your town council member, is still advocating for a bond.
So I will present the only example I have in Newport, when we were at the same same point in time there. How did the community show that they supported this effort in front of town council? They gathered about 50 students and parents who came into the town council chambers and sat on the floor the night of the vote. And that's how they showed support and influence upon their council person. They didn't have them call anybody or anything like that. I don't know how other communities have done it, if at all. Some have not. But that's also.
So we've had though council members twice, maybe three council members, right, say that they haven't heard. And so, in fact, one of them made a plea and said, let me know how you feel. So I think it's imperative for us to have, for people in this community to make phone calls, because if not, it shows apathy. And I think it's important, especially when they're asking for it. I mean, that's just my thoughts.
It's just a double-edged sword, because, you know, this is the social media double-edged sword. You go out there and you say, let your council member know, and then you're right, like, you get both sides of the equation, you know, and I understand what you're saying.
Well, I'm not saying it's, I'm saying we have to do it strategically. I agree to throw it out there because we've seen that. The negative vote is consistent, right? We've seen that. I think Dr. Dixon did a, look more deeply at who's voting, and we know that it's been pretty consistent, but we've had to work really hard to get, to get enough votes to put us over that. So that's what I'm saying. I think it's important to do that because they're asking for it, but I think it has to be strategic. I don't think it's a social media campaign. So.
I mean, it's a fair comment. I think it's, people in mass have been effective at other budget sessions in the past, I would say, you know, and also union contracts and other things, when people show up, there tends to be a lot more pressure, so. We have 20-ish days, 20-something days. I don't even know what's nearly doable and how to funnel the right people into getting the message, educating them. I find like the ballot's much more easily in my mind to manage, because now I can just say, go push, go vote yes. And right now we're kind of saying, well, here's the project. Do you like it? Do you not like it? And then there's a lot of explaining to do in between.
So does the community know that the town council is in a position to possibly take away their opportunity to weigh in on this?
So I would say that that is the one thing that crossed my mind as far as the social media thing, is saying, do you want to have a chance, Coventry, to weigh in? Because that's the core question for me. Do you want to have the right to vote on this project, for good or for bad? And to me, that's a whole different question on whether you like the project or not. Because I know people in this community like their right to vote, good or bad. And so I think on that, we all agree. And so that would be something that I could see going to council and saying, don't take my right away. I'm okay with voting no, but don't take that away. You'll get some people who come out and say, you know, just torture. Don't put me through the pain, but I kind of feel, I don't know how others feel about that.
If I get any feedback from people along that line, they would say, when do I get to vote?
Yeah.
When is the vote? When do I get to vote?
Yeah.
None of them said, what's the town council gonna do? Nobody said that.
What's the
Yeah,
next
because they
step?
don't know
They don't
that that is.
understand.
They don't.
that
They
that's
just
the
think-
process.
Tell me when I need to vote.
So exactly what I heard.
And this is where I asked Dan to cover is, but I would say if this goes down to council, what I'm gonna say to everybody is the council took away your right to vote. I know you're not gonna like it, but it's true, you know, that's, I'll say, and they're gonna have to defend that, and that's what they need to know, is that is that's a real comment, is, you know, you gotta take this very strongly, because when you take away somebody's ability to weigh in, that's a good thing.
That's why I think though strategically, and so the beauty of this is that while I work and I'm hired by the school committee, and there are other people here that are employees, there are many people here that aren't. Elected officials have a right to say what they think and the way they're going to go, right? Other community members here have a right to do what they choose to do and say, and I think that's what we need to do is, like, you know, at some point we keep talking about, but there needs to be somebody that's going to run a group outside of this group that can say, hey, we're invested in this, we support the work that the school building committee has done, and we are going to go out and push the vote. And I think, so we talk about 20 days, I think that's a conversation, that has to take place at some point. And I don't even know if it's appropriate here. I mean, we've had the conversation. I'm hoping somebody will take the ball and run with it. But I think that, and I have faith, I have faith in the council that we'll get the votes we need to get it out there. I think they recognize that. My concern is the words that people may put on it, right? Because we've experienced that with a different council. We're going to put it out to you to vote, but then I'm not going to support it. And that's the kind of message which we don't want to have.
And so I think that's a little bit different conversation. We have a meeting next week. We can talk a little bit more about that. I would leave it at this on the communications is because I think it's a fair point. We've talked about this in the past about somebody stepping up to lead the charge. I can tell you unequivocally, it is not going to be me right now. A lot of my plate, you guys know I'm putting some effort there, as you all are, but I'm tasked out, as some of you are. But if you know of anybody on the outside who wants to maybe get involved and pull some weight on this effort, now is the time. The time is now. All right, presentation team, I'll keep it brief. There's gonna be more next week. Really, it's, I've already told you the premise. Phil's working on a big piece of this. Some of the information, that I even put out in the email is gonna be part of it. We're gonna be working on this over the next couple of weeks to pull it all together. I'll have more for you next week. Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay, we're at 8:03. Any public comment? I don't see any public here, so thank you very much. Scheduling the next meeting. So the next meeting is going to be next Tuesday.
Tuesday, November 2nd.
November 2nd. So I'll ask for a motion to schedule the next meeting on Tuesday, November 2nd, at 6 o'clock. I'll get you the location. We got to check with Bob Overlord of whether we can do it here.
So moved.
Kathy, Lita, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can
Motion
we-
passes.
At some point, can we vote, once we lock in the schedule and the bi-weekly, can we vote to lock in a schedule through a certain date?
Yeah.
Rather than having to do this every week to vote for the next
Yes,
one?
if it's on the schedule, actually, we can just
We don't
adopt
even
the
have to worry
schedule.
about it, you know.
And, I'll just ask for a motion to adopt the schedule as presented. Keep in mind, the meetings should always change.
Yeah.
You're right, locking that in, and having,
It just makes it easier to try to hold them.
it's a good thought. And then
I like
you can see your calendar.
Yeah.
And I'll get a motion to adjourn at 8:04.
Second.
Kathy, Lita is my second.
Right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?